Okay, so now we want to add some grass into these sort of open areas that we've still got on the ground. So to do this, we're going to click on Terrain, go to our inspector, and we've got a little section called Paint Details. This is where you would actually paint your grass. I'm just going to use this kind of a brush, this nice soft brush, edit details and add a grass texture. Now we're going to click on this and search for grass. We've got a few. These are the types of grass texture that we need, and this one is the one that comes with the standard assets. So I think I'm going to use this one. Now these values are a bit too big to begin with. Okay, they're gigantic, so we're just going to adjust these values. So the minimum width is going to be 0.5, the maximum width is about 1, the minimum height is going to be 0.8, and the maximum, it's going to be 0.5 rather. The maximum height is 0.8. It's going to add a little bit of variation. Now our noise spread is how close this grass sticks to each other. So now it's being very small, 0.1, it'll actually be really, really clumped together. So make it a lot bigger. I'm going to make it about 25 so that it's spaced apart nicely. It also gives you these tint colours that look horrendous. Okay, so I definitely wouldn't use these colours. I'm just going to set these to white. Okay, if you did want to tint your grass, that's how you would do it with those two colours. And you can always come back to this editing even after you put your grass in there, it's not a problem. Billboard, we're going to leave that checked. Okay, just click add, and then we've got some grass. Now very importantly, because we're working on a very small mesh, it's only 100 meters by 100 meters, we want to keep our brush size really small, 1.1. Our opacity is how strong is the look of the grass. Okay, I want it to kind of blend in with the background. Doesn't mean it's going to be transparent, it just means that the actual colour itself won't be so vibrant that it sticks out against everything else. So I'm keeping my opacity pretty low, 0.035, and the target strength is how much do we actually paint. Now it goes up in increments. If I go any lower than this, I'll end up at 0. So I'm at 0.0625. So just to show you what the grass would look like, if I just click and drag, you can see a little bit of grass there. So through my game, if I just drop down, so this is the kind of grass that you can create. I mean, it's not bad, to be honest, it's quite nice. So we're just going to be painting some of that into our scene. Okay, in order to get rid of the grass, you just hold, click on it and hold Shift as you paint. And obviously my brush is pretty small and my opacity is really low as well. Okay, so let's start on this side then. So we want little bits of grass. Just maybe around like the base of trees and things like that. But you don't want to paint the grass everywhere. Now that went through the actual thing there, didn't it? There we go. That's not too bad. And I'm just clicking, I'm not clicking and dragging, because if you click and drag you're going to end up with loads and loads of grass. Now you will see in some games that use similar types of grass that they actually vary it, so you get little bits of grass, and that's more of a kind of a performance thing. When they've got a large area to fill, you don't really want masses and masses of grass, so you'll actually just put little bits. I think it looks kind of weird and you've just got little bits sticking out like this, but it's kind of where we are with games at the moment and what systems can handle. And obviously I'm going to be checking how this is dealing with the frames per second, what kind of you know, how is it taxing the resources? If it kind of goes through a rock a little bit, don't worry too much. As long as it's not right in the middle of the rock or anything like that. And occasionally you want like little open areas as well. But the grass is quite nice at sort of blending rocks and those kind of things into the ground. And every now and again you can just check these with the lighting on as well to see what they look like. So I'm obviously not going to do the entire map right now. I want to put enough down that I can actually check the performance. Occasionally you can come out onto the path if you want. And the grass will also animate as well, so it kind of sways with the wind. It's got a little bit of a bend factor to it, and you can adjust that bend factor as well. I'll probably not do this bit at the moment. I think I've got enough grass in order to sort of check what's going on. So inside of the game then, I'm going to watch my frames per second. So 105 or so. So you can see my batches are about 1300. Not bad, but take a look at the grass though. It really does enhance the scene, I think. It just makes it look really quite nice. And sort of completed, if you like. So before it was like little bits of open area that just looked a little amateurish, I guess. Yeah, and with the lighting and everything, I think it looks quite nice. So over there I'm still getting about 99 frames per second, but that's still good, you know, as long as I don't drop below 30 I'm quite happy. Still got quite a bit more to put into this scene, but overall, yeah, not bad. Now obviously once the entire thing is sort of covered in detail, we'll see what kind of frames per second I'll be getting then. Certainly won't be getting 300. If I can get 60, I'll be quite happy. And bear in mind that this is just like the environment. So if you wanted to actually build a game with this, you'd have to take into consideration all of the mechanics, the scripts, the characters, particle effects, and all the rest of it as well. But overall, yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. So that's grass. I'm just going to put my lighting back on so I can see this. Every now and then we do have our actual plants, don't we? If I go into my projects, we do have our tree 2. It was tree 2, wasn't it? So every now and then you can actually put some of these in if you want, just as an extra bit of detail. But unfortunately these are going to have to be hand placed, because I think they were taking up it was really increasing the draw calls, and it was really affecting the frames per second. So these ones, probably just add a few here and there just to add a little bit of detail. So I'm just gonna put a few in sort of base areas of these, and I'm mostly going for the areas that are lit as well. So I don't really want to waste them in darker areas where the player might not necessarily see them. And they are pretty small, so somewhere like out here might be a good idea, so that they are a little closer to where the character is definitely going to see them. And then obviously just rotate a little bit in order to add some variety. Let's just check this out. Yep, so they're just on the ground there, just adding a little bit of variety there. I've still got my original one there. I think I placed a few more, around here, just to add variation. Okay, and as you can see, I'm still getting 115 frames per second. So that's good. So sparingly, just place those around the scene. Probably maybe about 10 or 12 per island. I guess these are kind of islands, separated by a path. So that would be an island, that one would, that one over there, and then this one. So probably about 10, I would say, just for a little bit of detail. Okay, so everything is now laid out, so it's starting to look quite nice. Oh, there's a couple of little bits that I've overlooked there, so I'll sort those out soon. In terms of the trees that we had along the side, obviously they were causing a major performance issue. So I think what I'm going to do, that might look quite nice, is actually turn this large area into kind of like the sea, or possibly like a really big lake. So we can put a water feature in there, that might be quite nice. And then we can use these rocks to continue to sort of build around this back area. So I think I'll make a start on that. That's obviously going to be far less polygons than putting in loads and loads of extra trees. So let me take one of these, I'm going to duplicate it and move it over there, and one of these, duplicate it and move it over there, and I think that's the same one, isn't it? So basically we're just working with these two for now. So right, let's take a look. So I think what I'm going to do with this is actually scale it up a little bit so it's much bigger. And have this as kind of like a corner piece. Okay, yep, I might go with that. So something like that might be good. Now I want to take this same piece, I want to duplicate that again, so this is rock 2. Control and D to duplicate, bring this across here, and this time I'm actually going to stretch it, I'm going to warp it in this way. Oh, and I might actually just make it a little bit taller as well. Just try and sort of make it look as though it's actually one piece. Yep, okay, that's quite nice. And then I might just take this one again, Control and D to duplicate, bring this across here, and this time I can just sort of rotate it this way. I'd actually just scale it out a little bit so it's a little bit wider. Now it looks like that all fits in as one, doesn't it? Alright, good. So now it's just a case of going along this side. I might just come up in this angle just so I can see it a little better. So Control and D to duplicate. Bring this one down this side. We've got one of these. Control and D to duplicate. Yeah, so I'm just going to be working with these two. Okay, yeah, that's quite nice. Ooh, actually, where that is at the moment, I kind of like the fact that it's actually coming out onto this path. Maybe something like that. That would be pretty good. Take this one again, Control and D to duplicate. And I'm just going to totally rotate this one around so it's something like this. So it just looks different to the other one. It doesn't matter that there's a little bit of a gap there, that's perfectly fine. Just keeping an eye on the bottom parts there. I'm just looking for any kind of sharp seams and that kind of thing, but it looks like it's sort of blending nicely. That one's blending pretty well as well. Just make sure there's no gaps at the bottom there, we don't want to see that. Alright, that's pretty good. Control and D once again. This time push this back. So what I might do is, yep, rotate it around like that. So it just creates almost like a change of direction. Take this, Control and D. Yeah, that's quite nice. That sort of merges nicely. I'm going to duplicate that one again, Control and D. So I'm going to keep that at the same rotation, so it's basically just the same piece, just extended a little bit. One of these again, Control and D. Yep, okay, that's quite nice. And I might just go up to there, and the rest of this would be kind of like water. Okay, so all of this area would be kind of like a beach. So I think that's what we'll work on in the next video. I just want to see what this looks like through the player's perspective, and obviously just checking my frames per second as well. Okay, yep, so that's the full extent of this kind of like wall. Obviously, need to do something with the ground texture. And then it dips down into this little sort of stream that's going on there. Okay, good. And then obviously around here would be the actual beach area itself. In terms of frames per second, I'm still staying above 90, so that's good. And in some areas doing very well, 300 or more. Excellent. And then when I look back in this direction, okay, about 90 there, so that's good. All right, so yep, overall quite happy with that. Just going to save that. So in the next video, we're going to turn this area into a beach and put in some water. It's going to look quite effective. So in this video, we're going to now work on turning this area into some sort of a beach that leads into sort of like either a lake or some kind of a sea. Just make sure in your hierarchy that you organise everything nicely. So I've put all of my rocks inside the rocks. As you can see, I've got quite a few of those, etc. So we're just going to click on the terrain itself. So click back on this. And in the inspector, under our paintbrush, we can go to our stamp terrain. So what we're going to do is basically find a good sort of brush. This one might be quite nice. So I'm just going to bring the actual size of this up a bit, and the strength quite a bit. So what we can see there is we've got an interesting texture. Now instead of it pushing the terrain up, what I want to do is push the terrain down. So to do that, we're going to click subtract. You'll notice when you click subtract, it doesn't really do anything. That's where you have to add this max add. So the more you come up on this, the more it will actually push down into it. So we're going to go crazy on that, maybe all the way up to 1. And obviously there you can see the actual edges of this beach. So I might have to make it a little bit smaller because, oh actually no, that's not bad. There, I kind of like that. So I'm just going to click there. Alright, and that obviously gives me my beach area. In fact, let me just click. No, I like the first one. Control Z to undo there. Just going to rotate this around. So just to get the beach set up, and I might have to make my brush smaller in order that I can actually affect this. So I'm just going to do another one there. Change my rotation. Another one there. Another one there. I'm going to make my brush a lot bigger. So just on the size there, yeah. And then obviously the rotation on this. Same again on this side, so I'm just going to rotate it a little bit more. And I might just make my brush a little bit smaller. And there we go. Okay, so now basically we've got this area coming down into a flat area where we can actually now put our water. So let's go and get our water. So in the project, assets and standard assets, we obviously have our environment, water, and water 4. So this one's the one that's more like sea, in that it's got waves and that kind of thing. So let's just double click on this one, the prefabs, and we're going to go with the advanced as opposed to the simple. So let's just drag this in. As you can see, it's quite nice. And let's just drag this down. I'm gonna drag it across. Might just pick it up a little bit. Not too much. We are going to have to adjust the waves and things, I think. In fact, I might just scale this up a little bit. I've got to be careful that this water doesn't extend to that little area up there actually, so let me just scale it down a bit to about there. Just don't want to affect that little stream because obviously that is also coming down to the level of this water. At the moment the bit in the middle shouldn't be affected because it never falls down below this level. So yeah, I think that's quite nice. Obviously I do need to extend the water quite far out, so let's do that. Okay, yep, looking good. So through the game tab, let's take a look at this. So there we can see the water and everything. We do need to adjust the waves so that they look a bit better. At the moment they're a little bit large, and we need to do something about the ground showing through as well. Okay, that's fine, easy enough to fix. And then all the way up to there. And this is still fine. Okay, good. All right, We are going to need to do a little bit of sculpting on the beach area there, and obviously some texturing as well. So now it looks like when you come off the beach area, you're straight into this sort of woodland, and at the far side you come up against a cliff, which prevents you from like leaving this map. So it's a contained map, only a very small one, so it might be suitable, for example, for like a key plot point in a game or something, something where you don't explore a full level, you're just basically you've got a small objective to achieve or something. Okay, so in the next video we'll sort out these waves, and we'll start doing a bit of texturing and a little bit of sculpting on this beach area. Okay, so in this video we want to change some of these waves. The amplitude of it is a little bit too much because we can start to see the underground of this level under here. Although it looks relatively nice at the moment, we're just going to adjust this. Now what I would recommend, if I just click on environment and water again, water 4, is before you actually change this particular water, is to go into the materials. And we already have a water 4 advanced material there. We actually want to keep the default material. If we actually change the material, we're changing it pretty much for the future. Okay, the only way you're going to return back to its default is to re-download the standard assets again. So instead of ruining our original preset water, what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the water 4 advanced material. All right, so we've got a copy of it. That's the original. The copy is the original. The one that's already on the water, we're now going to change this one. So in the hierarchy, we're going to click on water 4 advanced, and notice that you do get a couple of extra cameras, and this is so that it can do this. So you've got like basically your reflections and stuff like that actually in the water, so you don't want to delete those. Okay, so with our water 4 advanced selected, let's go to our inspector, and we can see that we have all sorts of sliders and things that we can change. Okay, so first of all, the overall quality we're going to keep on high. Edge blend, let's see, so that's basically what the edge blend is doing. So let's take a look. So yeah, the edge blend isn't bad actually, but water features not supported. I'm not sure which one I like best. I mean, this one looks a little basic, doesn't it? Well, we'll see what happens after we've changed the change some of these wave settings. So refraction and reflection, you can obviously change the color of those to change the color of the water. I'm quite happy with it at the moment. These normals and shore and foam are perfectly fine at the moment. Yep, these are all fine. And what we want to change is basically the amplitude, frequency, steepness, etc. and speed. So our amplitude offset on the X, let's just experiment with this. So you see what that's doing as I drag up there. Whoa. So I want to come way down. With the Y, let's take a look. So that's going to make it move up, so it's quite choppy seas. I come down, and that's going to sort of smooth it out a little bit. For the Z, let's take a look. So that's going to do it that way. So no, we don't want anything on there. In fact, I want to go with 0 for that one. And for the W, which is the waves going that way, we're going to potentially go on 0 there. So now we've got something that's a little bit better. On the X, let's also come to 0 and see what happens. So when we go to 0, we've kind of calmed it down a lot. On the Y, I'm also going to go to 0, and now we've basically just got this. Probably just come up a little bit on the Y, 0.07, and maybe a little bit on the X, 0.16. So we've got a little bit of motion going on. The steepness of this, you can adjust those for the steepness of these elements. but I'm actually quite liking that. And the speed, I might just reduce this a bit, so -1 on the X, on the Y I might say 1, and the Z 0.5, and on the W about 2. Okay, so let's have a quick look through our character's eyes now. Okay, yeah. So I may want that edge blending back in, I think. But overall it's less choppy now, and it does kind of look more effective, I think. Alright, good. So let's see what it's like once I put the edge blend back on. Now, the question is, are we going to see that underneath? Let's take a look. Yeah, you see, we can see the edge there, which is not good. We definitely don't want that. And obviously the edge is quite close there. We can currently walk under the water. What about if this was the area at which I stopped? Let's take a look. I can still see an edge there. We can obviously restrict the character from going too far. I can still see the edge under there, okay. So I might actually take the edge blending off. So let's do something about our shaping of this beach. So what I want to do is come back to my terrain, and I'm just going to go to the smooth height. I'm just going to take a noisy brush, something like this. I might actually just increase my brush size quite a bit, and my brush strength, just bring it down about half so that we can just soften some of these elements out. In case if there's any sort of hard edges. You wouldn't expect a beach area to be too sort of too angular or too hard. Okay, so now what I want to do is come over to my raise or lower terrain. My brush strength about 0.012, and I'm just going to come up with my brush size, and I'm just going to sort of paint in a little bit of a beach area. If you feel that you make a mistake anywhere, it's just a case of holding Control in order to lower that back down again. Oops. I'm going to soften that back down soon. So that's come up quite a bit. So now it's basically just going back over to the smooth height and just increasing that size. That strength rather. So if you increase it a lot, it will actually just push it all back down again. I want to go to my razor lower terrain, just holding control and just push this back down again. So it's basically just continuing to sort of build on it, really. Okay, yeah. And then obviously it gets a lot sort of, it gets a lot flatter in the middle there, which is fine. Over this side, we're now going to smooth some of this out. See right there that I need to, where am I? I need to raise or lower a bit of terrain there. And then go to my smooth and just smooth a bit of that out. Okay, good. So let's see what it looks like now through the game tab. That's a bit bumpy. Okay, that needs some work. And the water sort of ends there as well, so I need to extend the width of that water. Okay, yep. Alright, so that's not so bad. That kind of looks like a build-up that you might expect on the beach. There was just one side, wasn't there, that was a little bit too bumpy. Let's see if we can find that. Was it this side? Yeah, it was a bit too bumpy, so I just need to push that back down again. So smooth height. Just going to reduce my spacing a little bit and just push a lot of this down. Okay, let's take a look once again through the character's eyes. That's not too bad. There's a slight bit of a bump there, but it's okay. Kind of looks like a bit of beach build-up. notice that the edge of the water is no longer sort of jagged or anything. It's now got a softer kind of feel to it, without having that really soft blend that I thought looked a little unusual. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that. So just continue to work at it until you get sort of an area of beach that you think looks quite effective. So what I need to do with the actual water 4 advanced is obviously scale this up. And we can see where the actual edge of the terrain is there underneath the ground there. Okay, good. So let's just save this. Okay, so in this video we're going to sort out this texture for this beach. But first of all, when you get close to the edge of these rocks, you can actually see where the water line is. So what I'm going to do is basically just extend these rocks out a little bit. So let me just get into position. I might actually just use this very same rock, so I'm just going to do a Control D to duplicate, bring it out a little bit and just rotate it around so that we've got a bit of an edge. Something like this I think should look good. Actually that looks fine where it is, so I don't need to move it. And what I might also do is take this one, Control D to duplicate, and just move this one back so it creates a little bit of a wall. Okay. Now due to the fog, technically shouldn't be able to see that far ahead. I just want to double check that beforehand, however, when the character gets into that position. So let's just test this through the game tab to make sure that we can't see the edge of the water, as that would be a very obvious giveaway, wouldn't it? So right there I can't see where the actual water plane itself ends. Just check it from the this position as well, so obviously it's all excluded by the fog at that point. And obviously when I'm coming up here, the rocks look fine. I get to this point and I can't see that edge of the water, which is good. It looks as though the water goes on forever. Excellent. Alright, so that's sorted. So now it's just a case of actually painting the beach. So if we click on the hierarchy, terrain, in the inspector we can come down to our paintbrush. Just ensure that you're on paint texture, and under the layers we're going to create ourselves a new layer. I'm simply calling this one sandy. Okay, it's a sandy texture. I'm going to create this. I'm going to type sand. Now we've got two types of sand. This is the one that comes with the new terrain tools. It's actually quite well detailed. It's really good, but it's very repetitive. And if you put this one down on a large area, you're going to get sort of a wallpaper effect where you've got this massive pattern that just doesn't look very good. It's great for like small details. It's great for like little bits of you know, patches of sand, but the better one is the one that comes with the standard assets, the sand albedo. So I'm just going to click on this one, and I'm actually going to use the normal from the other sand texture, which is very good. Sand, I'm going to use this sand normal. Now it does work with this particular albedo, but I'm going to be applying it to this one. It does work quite well. I'm going to go with about 1.3 for the normal. Okay, we don't have to worry about tiling. Tiling is perfectly fine on these. So let's paint. Just make sure that both of your mask filters are switched off just by clicking on the eye. And we're going with a brush strength of 1 and a spacing of 0. Okay, so let me just get into position. Now the reason why I've got spacing on 0 is so that I can basically just paint it directly on there without having to go over it again and again. But I don't want to get too close to the edge, because when I get close to the edge, that's when I want to start putting the spacing up. So let's just start painting. So as I paint this on, you can see it's quite a nice material, nice sandy material. And let's just paint all the way along. All we're wanting to do really is just cover it. Just be careful not to get too close to the edge. It's this path that I'm concerned about. Okay. I'm not concerned about the mud. Don't worry about that. I'm going to erase the mud from this particular section. So let's just go all the way along. Oh, whoops, I've accidentally painted on there. Control Z to undo. Is it going to allow me? Ah, okay. I accidentally painted on there. So in order to undo that, I would have to go to my path and paint that back on using the path. Okay, just be careful about that. See, I wanted to use my move tool and just move, but it hadn't quite registered with that. Back onto my sandy again, and let's continue to paint. So I actually just want to test this out through the character's eyes, see what this looks like from the character's perspective. Okay, so in terms of like a sandy beach, yeah, I think that works pretty much. Yep, all the way to the end, good. All right, that's working. Now there is some more terrain under the water, so if we click on the hierarchy, water for advanced, and just uncheck this, we can see that underneath this we've got lots of texture, so this all needs to be sand as well. So let's go back to our terrain and in our paint tool. What we're going to do now is obviously make our brush size a lot bigger. Whoa, too big. Let's reduce it down about this big, should be good. And we're just basically going to paint all of this with sand. We don't want any of those leaves showing through the water, which can occasionally happen. Okay, there we go. And so now when I put the water back on, great, it's all fully covered, and it's actually got a sandiness underneath the water as well that will slightly show through. Okay, so now we've got the edge to contend with. So I want this basically to go all the way up to this path. So if we click on the terrain and back onto our paintbrush, we're clicking on our sandy. This time I'm going to push my brush spacing up to about 10. I'm going to reduce my brush size, about this size, and obviously we're going to now paint. Alright, but bear in mind, you know, we've got spacing on now, so it's a matter of going over this numerous times until you get something that you quite like. Might just want to get a little bit closer, and you can see it blending now. If you don't do this, you're going to end up with a really hard edge like that, and it's just not going to look effective. So you may have to click, release as you're moving around as well in order to ensure it gets enough coverage. And if you're feeling it's too difficult to do, like you're not getting enough, just reduce your spacing a bit. The more spacing you have, the less it covers. So you have to keep painting over it again and again and again. What I'm thinking is I'm just going to do the edge of this, so don't worry about the other bits, I'll come back to those in a second. Now this doesn't have to be you know, very sharp between the sand and the path. In fact, let me reduce my spacing a bit, down to about 7 I'm thinking. And then obviously it's just a case of then taking your spacing all the way down to 0 and just painting in those kind of gaps. Let's just see what this looks like from the character's perspective at the moment. So there we go, and now it kind of looks like the beach is sort of blending in with this path. Good, that's what we want, this kind of soft. That little bit there, I'd probably just cover that in some of this mossy texture, some of this, just so it doesn't look out of place. But yeah, I think I'm quite happy with the beach texture there. So, ready for the next video. All I want you to do is just finish the texturing on the beach. So I've got quite a bit to do there. You obviously don't want to sit and watch me doing that for ages. So just up to about there, and you want your beach to sort of like potentially come around like this. You don't want it to go all the way up to the path because that's quite far up. So you want sort of a nice sort of shape going on with it. It transitions into mud at this point. Some of these leaf textures you might need to paint over those with your original mud texture before you actually paint your sand. So it's just a case of coming back down to your base mud and just kind of painting over that. You don't have to worry about blending that one because obviously all you're doing is basically just overwriting it. So now you should have your beach fully textured, and it's time to add a few extra details in order to complete this. So just as we've done with the rocks in the central area, we're also going to bring some rocks over here. So in the project, let's go to props, rocks and boulders, and rocks. We've got various ones that we can use. I think I'll bring in rock group. Just put these into place. Try this one. Yep. So just breaking the area up by adding some sort of details like this. Yep, just sticking out of the sand and that kind of thing. I might also do, in order to break up this sharp edge here, is bring in something like this. So now it looks like it naturally sort of is growing out of there, if you like, so it doesn't look so hard edge. The same on this one, I think. You know, to be honest, that one's not too bad, but still, I'll do the same anyway. Yep, something like that. So now it looks a little better and a little bit more complete. I still want a couple more trees, so in the hierarchy and the terrain, I can now go to my trees, and I'm going to use these kind of for desktop mod ones. Let me bring my brush size way down, and my tree density down to about 12. Just a couple along the edge here, maybe even actually one on the beach itself. Just provide some nice shadows along the rocks there. And let's do the same over here. So we're not putting absolutely loads of trees in, we're just putting enough that it looks like it's you know, consistent with what we've seen before in the middle part. We may even want to do that with this top part here as well. Yep, just so we've got trees all around, looks kind of interesting. And now we probably want to go in with some like grass and details like that. So I'm just going to switch off my shadows so that I can see this. We probably will get a little bit of grass growing out of the beach area. We may even want to pull in a couple of these ferns as well. So let's just duplicate this one. Bring this up here, you know, in order that it doesn't look so different to the middle part. You don't want the middle part really detailed and then this outer part to have almost nothing going on. Trying to get close to it. What I could do, as long as I've got it selected and my mouse there, I can press F in order to zoom in on this, and then obviously it will use that as its sort of pivot area. So when I rotate around, I'm actually rotating around that, and I'm zooming in directly on that as well. Let's put a fern on the beach area. In fact, maybe we want to put quite a few on on the beach as well, so it doesn't look so barren. Just make sure that they are sort of into the ground and everything, and then little bits of grass. You probably don't want too much grass on the beach area, but just a little bit to make it look kind of interesting. And around these kind of rocks, just to make them merge a little bit better. And a few more ferns and that kind of thing all the way along the beach area there. So your task, once again, is to finish off this beach area, put in a bit of grass, put in some ferns and that kind of thing, and if you want to put in any other flowers, feel free to do so. And just continue all the way around. So these new trees that we put in some grass and extra elements in order to make them blend nicely with this scene. Okay, so you should now have plenty of detail all across the beach and various other places. So now it's getting close to completion now. We've got plenty of stuff going on. I'm just going to temporarily switch off my lights and the shadows and things like that, so I can get close to some of these rocks. I've got the one that's coming out onto the path, if I can find it. There it is, just this one. It's coming out onto the path, so what I might do is actually have a little bit of ivy kind of growing up this, just to add a final bit of interest. So inside of the inspector, I'm going to start painting my ivy. Get it to kind of come up here, maybe across this one here. Okay, let's check this out. Yep, so I've got a little bit of ivy growing up the rocks there, out onto here, and yep, I think that looks pretty interesting. Let's have a look with the shadows and things. Yep, so that looks quite nice. I might also do a little bit more ivy down here, as though it's kind of growing out of the water. So just switch off my lights temporarily into the ivy group. And I might start under the water. Back down again, down to here. There we go. So it just makes it look a little bit more interesting when you add little bits of details like that. Now in terms of this water, although it's quite nice, it's not that visible at the moment. So I just want to show you what you can do with the water. So if I click on this Water Pro Daytime, which is this particular one, just make sure it's this one and not the Water for Advanced, which is the C. In the inspector, we actually have different types of modes. At the moment, it's refractive. You can also choose reflective, so that it's more like this, which at the moment I think actually looks better. And you have simple, which is not so good. I quite like this reflective, so you can't necessarily see under the water, but it is reflecting whatever's above it. Okay. It's got quite a nice colour on it. Let's just see with the fog on as well. Yep, it's quite nice. And what I want to do is actually change the colour slightly. on this. So you see where it says refraction color, it's currently like a greyish white. I might just come down to like this bluish color and just sort of make it slightly more blue. And you can even choose the amount of distortion that happens in this, the amount of refraction distortion, so you see how you can get it so it's almost clear or really, really intense. And you can even scale the waves as well. And the simple water horizon color, I might just make that a little bit darker. It's not really having that much of an effect on that, is it? But overall, I think that looks a little bit better. So let's have a look through the game now. Keeping an eye on my frames per second as well. So I'm staying above 60 frames per second, I believe. So 90 frames per second, 156, 170, etc. So yeah, pretty good. 180, that ivy looks quite nice there. And then when they come down to the water itself, yep, now it actually kind of stands out a bit more, and it looks a little bit more like the other water we've got, the sort of sea with the waves. You want to try and keep them closely aligned so they don't look like two different types of water. Great. So notice that they're a little bit more like each other now. 180 frames per second in certain areas. Then when I look over there, sort of 75, 69, 86, 90. Yeah, okay. So for example, if this was a level, let's say that we were now going to hand over to a game design team, we can see that we've got relatively good frames per second, so they could now add characters and other kind of things, and probably come out with at least 30 frames per second. We've organized everything nicely in our hierarchy. So for example, if somebody wanted to say, well, I just want to switch off the rocks, they can obviously then just do that straight away. If somebody said, right, I don't want any ivy in this, they can just switch all the ivy off. So then they can test the game easily with all these elements, and it's nicely organized. If you were going to hand this over to a different team, you would definitely want to organize it something like this so that it's easy to work with. And in fact, actually saying that, ivy group, if I'm complete with my ivy now, I've got all of these individual strands of ivy. Well, what I can do with my ivy selected is go into my inspector, and I can actually merge all of these pieces of ivy into one physical piece. So if I click merge now, are you sure you want to merge 15 ivy plants? Yep. And then obviously it'll take a little bit of time to actually merge all those. So they'll basically become one object. There we go, and it's all merged. I've got now one piece of ivy in my hierarchy, okay, and it's obviously using one material for each, so that sort of optimizes it slightly more. Doesn't change the ivy in any way. You would obviously do that once you're happy with it and you've got it all sorted the way that you want it to be. And I think we're almost complete. So I've now baked a new light map. 31 directional light maps with shadow mass. It took about 4 hours and 30 minutes. Okay, so it did take quite a while. And all it's done really is just lighten up some of these kind of cliffs and that kind of thing. There's not a massive amount of difference really. So it's entirely up to you whether you want to bake a new light map. Just be aware that it is going to take quite a long time for that to come out. If you are going to bake the light map, just ensure that in the hierarchy that your rocks and that your rocks under the inspector are marked as static, so that they will be included in the light map. Things like the bushes and the plants and the ivy, I wouldn't mark those as static because it just increases the amount of light maps that you have to create, and obviously it's going to take a lot longer. There's such small details that really I wouldn't include those. Just make sure that, for example, your logs are marked as static, and that the terrain is obviously marked as static. So if you want that final bait light map, you can go for it. Let me just go into my game scene, check my frames per second. So yeah, about 100. And you can just see a little bit of a difference, and now it's just a little bit lighter on the cliffs. That's kind of what I'm getting there. Okay, but it's entirely up to you whether you choose to do that. Okay, it's not absolutely necessary. It's just a final kind of like you know, piece of visual, if you like. So I'm just double checking all my frames per second from like different points of the map. So right in the center, as I continue to look around, I'm seeing I'm getting relatively good frames per second. As long as I'm not falling below 30, I'm actually quite happy with that. Okay, and I think finally what we could do is basically just add a little bit of wind so we can get these trees to start swaying a little bit. So let's do that. So to add wind, we're going to go to Game Object, 3D Object, and a Wind Zone. Okay, and that's obviously going to add a wind zone. So if I double click on it, there it is. And the direction that it's pointing in is basically the direction of the wind. You can, of course, rotate that to wherever you like it to go. Okay, so under the Y you can get it to go that way, whatever you want really. And obviously you get your you know, items that you can change. So you can either have it as directional, so it affects the entire map no matter where it is, or spherical, and if you chose that, obviously it would only affect things within that area. But I'm going to go for directional. Leave it on the default values at the moment, and let's see what kind of an effect we're going to get. The trees might not necessarily be affected at the moment. Yep, they are. Okay, so that's almost like storm level, isn't it? At that point in time, so that's quite extreme. We're also seeing these little bushes as well that we created. They're flowing around. But the ferns are not affected because they're not tree objects. So it's probably a little bit too powerful at the moment, and obviously they're being affected as well. So let's make the main around 0.3, turbulence around 0.2, pulse magnitude around 0.2, and pulse frequency, I'll just leave that as it is. Let's check it now. So now you got a little bit of wind going on, you can see that. And if it's still too much wind, yeah, that's quite nice. This doesn't affect the grass, by the way, only the tree elements. Just want to find one of these kind of bushes and just see how it's affecting them. Yeah, that's not bad. They're just sort of flowing a little bit. It's not so bad, but I think maybe I'm going to actually change that pulse frequency from 0.01 to 0.05. I'm thinking pulse magnitude, I'm just going to lower down to 0.1. Turbulence to 0.08, and my main, I'm going to lower it down to 0.1. So I'm just reducing all of those values. Okay, wait for it to start. Got a tiny bit of movement there. Probably not enough really. Okay, so it is very much trial and error, so you're going through them. Main, I'm gonna bump this back up to 0.2, my turbulence to about 0.1, and my pulse frequency, let me try increasing this. I'm just going to see what happens if I go to 0.02. Let's see. I think I'm quite happy with this one. Yep, with these particular values. So they're not moving a great deal, but that's perfectly fine. Let me just find one of these tiny little flowers that we've put around somewhere. And they're just moving a little bit. Okay, good. All right, overall I think that's pretty good for the trees. All right, I think I'm quite happy there. We've got a little bit of motion on the ground, so it just looks a little more interesting. It makes it look alive. For the wind for the grass, if you want to adjust this, it's actually under the terrain itself. And in the inspector, for the terrain settings, we have our wind setting for grass. So you've got your speed and your size and the amount it will actually bend. So let me just adjust the speed for this. So 0.3, and the size of this maybe 0.4. So when I now test this, see we've got some motion on the grass, but it's not quite as extreme as it was before, and notice that it's a little bit slower as well. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to switch off my stats. Now you will notice that if you were to uncheck your mute audio, and I'll just do this so that you can actually hear what happens. With my main character, you'll hear that he has some footsteps, and they're not particularly great. Now I'm not a massive fan of those footsteps, so if you want to take those out, it's obviously just under the first person controller, and it's on here somewhere. Footstep sounds, we've got 2 of them, so what we could do is basically just drop this down to like 0. Basically it will get rid of the footstep sounds for you. Okay, still got some jump sounds and things like that. I don't want to use the head bob, I'm not too keen on that. You can change your walk speed and your run speed if you want, so you can get him to walk faster or slower. And I'm actually just going to scale this character up a little bit. He seems a little bit small, so I'm going to make this around 1.3. In fact, maybe 1.2. 1.2 on X, Y, and Z. Right, just to make him a little bit bigger. And now he seems to be a little higher up. And notice that we're not getting those footstep sounds. Okay, great. So this is our main scene completed. And at the moment it's actually on free aspect, which we can see here. So in other words, it will basically scale itself to whatever screen that anybody's using. However, if you did want to, let's say, restrict it to a certain ratio or a certain screen size, you can choose that. So if I choose 1920 by 1080, notice that it goes a little bit widescreen. and then this is what it would technically look like on a 1920 by 1080 screen. Okay, so hopefully you've learned quite a few things. Hopefully you've got yourself a really good scene, and hopefully you'll be able to go on to create many more using these kind of techniques. So thanks for watching.